Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome back to Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. Fall is here, it's rainy, and we have a Pontiac. They got towed in from 5 hours away in Virginia. 2003 Grand Prix V6. Customer complaint, well, we'll read it, but he said it's running really rough. Well, welcome back to the early 2000s. This thing has 325,000 miles on it. That's pretty impressive. And I drove it up here this morning. It was dropped off. I just drove it up the driveway. Had a long crank time, and it was surging, and it really didn't have much power. It seemed to run fairly smoothly. It got up the hill here, but something's definitely wrong. Let's read the customer complaint. Here, fill out the form. Detailed description of the problem. Started in May 2023. Erratic idle. So I did the basics. Clean throttle body, replace IAC, tried to adjust idle with Autel, no luck. Went to replace many other sensors, and you'll see including the Rock Auto order history. One code that has been present from the start is a 5-volt reference 1 circuit. Okay, that's interesting. That's a good direction. Fuel sending unit went bad way before this, and that code has always been there. In the middle of this, I replaced ECM with flagship 1. Another flagship 1 part scan in there. No difference. With a voltmeter, I saw no 5 volts at map sensor, so I did probably the worst thing and spliced the 5 volt from the EGR valve. This has been undone last week to restore EGR, but not map wire. Also, at one point, live data showed minus 24 in a long-term fuel trim. Figured maybe overactive injector. Replaced them all with AC Delco. EGR pipe was solid carbon, clean that out. Still same battery, coil packs, ignition control module, as well as plugs, wires, all new. As of last week, idles happily at 2,000 RPM, original IAC. And MAP sensor back in the car, also persistent, misfire in cylinder 4 now, swap coil, wire, and plugs still there. Wow, okay. So, things I don't like right off the bat is flagship 1 ECM. I don't know if that's still installed in the car. And AC Delco injectors. We just recently saw that Chevy truck where the owner replaced the injectors with original AC Delco parts from eBay. Obviously they were counterfeit, so we'll see what's going on, but if we have this 5 volt reference code, we'll chase that first for sure. So let's get a scanner plugged in and scan it for codes. So for these older GMs pre-can, I do like the snap-on, but the launch scanners work just fine and they're faster to boot. So we'll start with this. See if we can at least auto ID the vehicle. Yes, 2003 Pontiac Grand Prix. Let me double check the VIN. The VIN is correct. So we'll say yes. We'll just do a health report. Only 5 modules available. Probably doesn't have OnStar. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so here are the 6 trouble codes stored in the ECM. Map sensor circuit low voltage, engine misfire detected. Malfunction indicator lamp control circuit. So the check engine light, which actually I don't see in the dash, so maybe the bulb's burnt out. Manifold absolute pressure circuit intermittent low voltage, and 5 volt reference 1 circuit. Perfect, excellent. Right off the bat, we can jump into live data. This is actually pretty quick. Engine data 1, 41 data PIDs. Okay, let me just select some PIDs and we'll take a look. Alrighty, so let's take a look at some data PIDs. So 12 data PIDs. Engine coolant temp, that's reasonable. Baro, reasonable, 14 psi. Engine speed, IAC, intake air temp is fine. Long-term trim, look at the map, 0 volts. So the problem's here. Let me press the throttle position sensor, or the gas pedal. Yep, that works fine. And let's start up the car, see if the mass airflow sensor works. See how it starts. It's rough, it's shaking. There it is, our MAF is there. Look at the IAC. it's basically full open. I'll give it a little bit of gas. Long-term, short-term trims. Don't know if that's gonna go into closed loop. We can definitely see, so we don't care about baro. We don't care about air temp. We care about loop status. And how about the oxygen sensor? 1 and 2. It's idling at 2400 RPM. It's a little slow. There we go. Okay, it looks like it's in closed loop. Trim is okay. Oxygen sensor is oscillating. Let's go after this map sensor. So on the front seat there's a box of parts apparently, and a note. Let's read. Good day, Ivan. In the box are some old parts including the original ECM. Included a new OEM map sensor and pigtail. The current one is cut. Oh, that's why we didn't see any voltage. From when I tried to splice the 5 volt from the EGR. Just to recap my problem: idle sign erratic, hard start when warm, persistent misfire cylinder 4. If we fix all this, I would like a way to turn the cooling fans on with a toggle switch. No rush, call me anytime. I'm so excited to put a year's worth of guessing to rest. Well, that's exactly what we do here, Kevin. So you brought it to the right place. Let's take a peek. This is a good idea to do an inventory of the parts available, so we know what we have to work with. New map sensor and connector. Looks like there's some AC Delco parts in there. Okay. There's the original engine computer, and then a whole bunch of stuff. So some AC Delco stuff, oxygen sensor, fuel system management, map sensor, probably like 10 map sensors in here, some ignition coils. There's a IAC, ignition control module, you know, all the basics. So that's good to know, but let's dive under the hood. Alright, let's do a quick visual inspection under the hood, see what we're dealing with here. Okay, we got some fresh spark plug wires that look a little long. Fuel pressure gauge, okay, that's plumbed in right there. Got some wiring modifications like the owner said. He tried tying the EGR valve to the map sensor, which lives... No, that's the evap purge solenoid. There's the TPS. Where is the map sensor? Not exactly sure what this is all about. Okay. It doesn't look too awfully butchered. Make sure we have some engine oil. Check that. Coolant. Check the basics, and we'll see if we have to fix any wires before we even start the diagnosis. Okay, so before we dig in, let's do a little research on this P1635, the 5 volt reference code. So let's read. The PCM provides 5 volts to the following sensors: the map, fuel tank pressure, EGR, and throttle position. These 5 volt reference circuits are independent of each other outside the PCM, but are bussed together inside of the PCM. Therefore, a circuit condition on one sensor 5 volt reference circuit may affect the other sensor 5 volt reference circuit. Okay, great. So PCM monitors the voltage on the 5 volt reference circuit, and if it's out of tolerance, 1635 sets. Engine's running. So this would affect a lot of sensors, not just the map. Okay. And here's the trouble tree. So if we know which sensors are on this tree, we need a wiring diagram. So this is the OE diagram. There's the map sensor. There's the throttle position sensor right next door, and then the engine coolant and the intake air, they're 5-volt signals, but the 5-volt reference goes through a resistor and it gets pulled down to ground by this thermistor. So we're worried about the actual 5-volt reference wire going to the map sensor. We can measure it going to the TPS or the EGR valve, which is right here. So there's a position sensor inside the EGR valve. Again, gray wire. So now we can go under the hood, and my plan is to, well, let's install a known good, OEM map sensor. Make sure the wires are good. We'll put a meter on the 5-volt reference right here, this gray wire, and we can compare it to the TPS since they're supposed to be identical. Clear all the codes out, make sure we have 5 volts everywhere, and take this car for a test drive and see what happens. Alright, so the map sensor is this little box right here, and this one looks to be aftermarket. Take it off the vacuum line, and see this wire right here is the one that the owner tried to splice into the EGR gray wire. So right there. So let's bring this back to stock. There's the remains of the original gray wire right here. So I want to strip that back and put a probe on it, see if that's 5 volts. And kind of restore this to stock factory specification before we go too much further. So cutting and splicing wires is never really a great idea, because now the wire is cut so close, in this harness, and the harness goes under the intake manifold. I'll have a really hard time even grabbing that wire. I can try to pull it out with some pliers and get a piercing probe on there. I just want to see if there's 5 volts on this gray wire right here. Alright, so I'm measuring the 5-volt reference on the end of this wire going to the map with a key on, 1.1 volts. Okay. And on the EGR sensor, this gray wire, about 1 volt. So they're very close. There's a problem with the 5-volt reference for sure. When we turn the key off, should go to sleep. 0. Okay, so something on this 5-volt reference tree is shorted to ground. Now, okay, let's see if, we have a voltage. Can we put, with the key off, can we put a test light from battery positive to the 5-volt reference wire? Is this a hard short to ground somewhere? Is it rubbed through? Because there is some voltage on there. It's not 0. Okay, so it could be a shorted sensor, TPS, map, EGR, and what was that last one? We'll have to look at the OEM instructions, but how do we track this short to ground? Or maybe the 5-volt reference in the computer is bad, because right now it has the replacement computer in there, that flagship 1 computer. But yeah, so the problem's definitely there, so we should be able to diagnose it without test driving it. Alright, so let's unplug these sensors one by one. I want to unplug the EGR, unplug the TPS, see if our voltage returns. Boom! 5 volts! I unplugged the EGR, we're back to 5 volts. What? Back to 5 volts on the map. Plug the EGR back in. Pulling it right down to ground. That's it, we're done. Unplug this, install a new map sensor, fix that wire, see how this car runs. Holy crap, we got pretty lucky, but not without doing some research. OEM service info told us exactly which sensors are on there. Easiest one to unplug. Perfect. So yeah, let me fix up the wires. We'll install the OEM map sensor, see how this car performs. This is too funny. So we have a total of 4 map sensors available. This one was installed in the car. This is the brand new one from the genuine GM parts box. So, okay. This one was also in the spare parts box. And this one was in the spare parts box. Now this one looks like the original. It's dusty, it has the CBA marked, and it has an actual GM part number sticker on here. So I'm going to reinstall this. It has a little rusty marks on it. So, and it's like heavier than these things. Yeah, let's reinstall all the original parts. Even the engine computer, I really want to install the original. Alright, so I stripped back both the harness side and the connector side of that 5-volt reference wire. Obviously we're going to need an extension because it was modified. So let me get an extension. We'll solder, shrink wrap this whole thing, plug in the OEM original map sensor, clear the codes out, and see what happens here. We'll leave the EGR unplugged, obviously, since it's the problem shorting the 5-volt reference out. Alright, step 1, I'm just going to solder on a wire to the harness side. That's the hard to get to part. Then we'll cut it off, put some shrink wrap on there, and then solder it to the connector. So here we go. Warm up our trusty TS100 soldering iron and go to town. We'll make this, well, at least we'll put it back to factory. So, actually, good job to GM on the wiring. There's nothing wrong with the wiring. I fully expected there to be something rubbed through, some insulation falling off. Nope, 320,000 miles in this environment, and the insulation looks perfect. Yeah, take note of that, Mercedes and Ford. So, that's done. Let me put some shrink wrap on there. Okay, so here's the extension. Put a second piece of shrink wrap tubing, toast it on the first piece, put on the second piece, so it'll be ready to slide on once we finish this solder joint right here. So we're almost done. Alright, we're almost done. So let me just toast on this second piece of shrink wrap tubing. You guys, by the way, this is why soldering properly with shrink wrap is the way to do wiring repairs. You're not getting in here with a crimper, aviation grade crimper, and doing a wire extension. No way, no how. So I don't want to hear it in the comments. the crimping fans. Solder and shrink wrap for the win in this location right here. So let me wrap this up, and we'll even install the little clip right there. So as good as factory. Let's install the original map sensor. Alright, so keys on. We're at 5 volts. The original map sensor is happy in its home. And we're measuring right here at the EGR valve, which is unplugged. So scan for codes. Let's just clear everything out. We have one code stored. That's probably for the EGR sensor. That's the ABS, their chassis system. Okay, let's go in here. Yep, EGR solenoid control circuit. Perfect. So let's read the data stream and make sure all of our 5-volt sensors are on light. So we'll read baro, engine coolant temp, engine speed, fuel tank pressure sensor, intake air temp sensor. We'll do map, MAF, throttle position sensor. Okay. Alright, let's see. Map sensor, 14 psi, perfect. 4.6 volts. Intake air is good. Engine coolant temp is good. Baro is good. TPS, let me just do this to the throttle body. We'll go 100%. Yep, 4.5. I mean, this car should run perfectly now. Let's take it for a test drive. Alright, here we go. Let's fire it up. Okay, it's a little unhappy. Keep in mind, the EGR valve might be messed up. I think we might have to remove that EGR valve. It's chugging away. Let's raise the RPMs up a little bit. So short-term fuel trim, long-term fuel trim. See, the map is like 9 psi. It should be closer to 5. Yeah, we're still broken here. Let's take the EGR valve off and block it off or something. Yeah, so I touched the EGR pipe. It's scalding hot. We have massive EGR flow here. So this thing's probably, well, it's overheating. Messed up the sensor, pulled down the 5-volt reference. So what we need to do is unbolt either the pipe here or the EGR valve and just put a block-off plate there. Just slip it in and we should have no issues running this thing. So we're going to make a custom block-off plate for this EGR valve from this Chinese can of herbal tea. Chinese parts can be good for something. That should be sufficient. Maybe we'll just double it up and shove it in where the passage is. Alright, Chinese block-off plate installed right there between the EGR valve and the intake manifold. This thing should run a lot better. I also reinstalled the original purge solenoid. It just feels good to reinstall the original good parts. Alright, take 2. Oh, it's happier already, I can tell. Take some live data, take this thing for a spin. Yeah, it's running much smoother. No misfires yet. Take it for a test drive. Uh-oh. Map sensor 0 volts. What happened? TPS is still good. It was reading fine. Maybe you didn't like that block-off plate, huh? Read fault code. Failed. Dang. Let's check that map sensor again.